Hello, everyone. Between the war with Iran, moves in oil prices, an upcoming change to the chairman of the Federal Reserve, earnings season in full force, the month of April was busy, and there were a lot of potential market movers and disruptors. So, first of all, when we just look at the conflict going on with Iran, the war with Iran continued to offer a lot of headline noise and uncertainty, and it definitely appears that at this point, both sides are far from reaching any kind of resolution. The first round of talks in Islamabad during this month failed, and ultimately, at this point, it seems that a second round of talks is not in the works or hasn't been scheduled at this point. So there's some uncertainty in the air when it comes to how this conflict will end, the length of time that will continue with this conflict with Iran. A huge factor in that when it comes to the Strait of Hormuz and especially oil prices. And so oil prices fell around mid-month, around the 10th of the month. And that was due to some potential de-escalation, some optimism that was in the market, especially surrounding that first round of talks. But that quickly faded, and as the month closed, those oil prices increased to right back around $100 a barrel to end the month. This was due to a lack of progress with those discussions, there not being a second round of discussions on the books to close the month. That being said, it does not appear that oil is the primary driver of the equity market or the volatility at this point for day-to-day market moves. That seems to be that investors are peering through some of the volatility and are expecting at this time, for the time being, that the conflict won't be prolonged and that we'll have some kind of resolution or progress, despite that not being the case as of the close of April. When we look to the Fed chair and what's going on with the Federal Reserve, the nominee for Fed Chairman, Kevin Warsh, was officially approved by the Senate Banking Committee. And so now it goes to the full Senate, where they will vote on him to be the next chairman of the Federal Reserve. We're thinking that this will take place prior to the end of Chairman Powell's term in mid-May. Chairman Powell has said in a recent press conference or a recent public statement that he plans to stay on the committee just as a governor on the chair or the board of governors for the Federal Reserve. We don't see this at this point having any real problems. Some are viewing it as kind of a political stance due to the current administration having some issues with Chairman Powell at the moment, but we don't see that being a long-term, prolonged Federal Reserve type of issue. And we feel that the Federal Reserve will be pretty cautious when it comes to policy, especially with the increase in energy prices, the ongoing conflict with Iran, and how that affects oil. We think that they'll be a little bit cautious when it comes to making any kind of rate cuts throughout the year. Potentially one later in the year, but as of now, and as of their most recent meeting, it seems that they're on pause for the time being. When we look at earnings season, we're in the middle, in the thick of Q1 earnings season, and about 70 companies have reported as of the close of April, with the majority of them, about 80%, beating estimates by an average of about 12%. So really strong earnings are coming out of these companies from the first quarter. Over the long term, stock price will follow earnings. There can be disruptions, dislocations more in the short term, but as long as these companies continue to grow their earnings, it gives the market room to go higher. Now, where are most of these beats coming from? It's coming from more of that growth, cyclical segment of the market. That's going to be industries and sectors like industrials, technology, materials, and consumer discretionary, just to name a few. So despite all this noise that happened in the month of April, how did the market itself perform? How did stocks perform in the month of April? and they were sharply higher. They were finishing at all-time record highs. When we look at the numbers, the Dow was up over 7% for the month of April. The S&P was up almost 10.5% for the month of April, and the Nasdaq was up over 15% just in this 1 month. So strong performance when it comes to equities. Once again, the S&P and the Nasdaq indexes finished at record highs to close the month. So they were at the tip top of where they've been. That doesn't mean there aren't concerns in the market. Once again, we'll continue to be mindful of, watch what's surrounding the conflict with Iran, oil prices, the change in the Federal Reserve and the chairman of that. Later on down the road this year, we'll have a midterm election coming up. We want to make sure that the consumer stays strong and they're continuing to spend. So that doesn't mean there aren't potential risk still out there in the market. But as long as those company earnings are continuing to go higher, it gives the market room to continue to increase and those stock prices to continue to increase as well. So we continue to be positive on the market, still have a positive outlook for this year, but it definitely doesn't come without some potential risk as well. So we'll continue to be mindful of all those different factors, continue to fill you in each and every month on what we're seeing and what we're thinking. Hope you all have a wonderful month of May. See you next month.